once I started playing golf, we'd walk or run 36 to 45 holes per day on the weekends.
For years, Tommy Gainey was one of those golf stories people wanted to believe in. Not because he looked perfect, because he did not come from the polished center of the game. He did not move like a country club prototype. His swing looked handmade. His grip looked strange. His image was almost too easy to remember. Two gloves. That was the first thing people saw. Tommy Two Gloves Gainey. A man from South Carolina who once worked on a factory line, wrapping insulation around hot water heaters before he found his way into professional golf, not through the clean front door. Not through the smooth college pipeline that produces so many tour players. Not through the path that looks planned from childhood. His road was rougher. Mini tours, reality television, Q School, the Corn Ferry Tour, past champion status, Monday qualifiers, second chances, last chances. Golf did not open the front gate for Tommy Gainey. So he learned how to live through the side doors. And that became the story people liked. The working man with the strange swing. The golfer who looked out of place but somehow belonged. The man who could make people smile before he even hit a shot because the image was so clear. Two gloves. A violent swing. A blue-collar pass. A player easy to underestimate. Then, in 2012, he gave the story its perfect scene. At the McGladrey Classic, Gainey shot a final round 60 and won on the PGA Tour. One of those rounds that does not ask for permission. One of those days when the scorecard says what the swing never could. He was not supposed to be elegant. He was not supposed to look like the future of golf. But, for one afternoon, none of that mattered. The man from the side door had walked into the main room. And people loved that version of him. They protected it because it was useful. They repeated it because it felt clean. The factory worker, the oddball, the underdog, the player who beat the system without ever pretending to look like the system. But sometimes, the warning is hidden inside the myth. Because when a public image is built around second chances, people stop asking what happens between them. They remember the comeback. They forget the gap. They remember the nickname. They forget the man behind it. And in December 2019, the gap came back. Not as a rumor. Not as an old whisper. As an arrest. According to reports, Tommy Gainey was in Polk County, Florida, when authorities carried out a 6-day undercover operation called Operation Santa's Naughty List. The investigation was described by law enforcement as a prostitution and human trafficking sting. More than 100 people were arrested. Gainey was one of them. The allegation was first-degree misdemeanor solicitation. That is the important word. Allegation. What is confirmed is that he was arrested. What is confirmed is that he was accused. What is confirmed is that his name, his mugshot, and his nickname entered a completely different kind of public record. What is not confirmed is a story beyond the evidence. And this is not a verdict. This is a timeline. At the time, reports said Gainey had told authorities he was in the area for a charity golf event. That detail changed the entire shape of the story because it placed two images beside each other. A charity golf event and an undercover sting. The public did not need much more. The contrast was enough. Then Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd added the line that made the story travel even faster. Gainey, he said, had missed his tee time. Then came the punchline. He was a scratch. A golf joke. A law enforcement joke. A public humiliation compressed into 4 words. On another day, in another context, that phrase might have disappeared after one local segment. But this was different. It had a name people recognized. It had a nickname people remembered. It had a clean sports story suddenly attached to a police operation with a Christmas title. Operation Santa's Naughty List. The name sounded almost theatrical. The consequences did not. And for the first time in a long time, the Tommy Gainey story was not about the side door into golf. It was about a different door. A door in Florida. A door open during a police sting. A door that turned the underdog myth into something heavier. The easy version of the story would start there and stay there. It would treat the arrest like a single dark chapter. A clean fall from grace, a scandal, a headline, a mistake, a man caught in the wrong place. But that version is too simple. Because Tommy Gainey's public life had always been about doors. The doors he was not invited through. The doors he forced open. The doors he used when the official entrance was closed. That pattern made him admirable in golf. But in 2019, the same pattern made people look again. Not because one proves the other. It does not. A strange career path does not explain an allegation. An underdog story does not predict an arrest. A factory job does not become evidence. A nickname does not become character. But documentary stories are not built only from verdicts. They are built from pressure. And by 2019, the pressure around Tommy Gainey's image had changed. To understand why, the timeline has to go back before the mugshot. Back before the police operation. Back before the line from the sheriff. It begins with the story golf wanted. Tommy Gainey grew up far from the sport's most privileged corridors. He was not packaged like a prodigy. He did not arrive with the clean resume of a polished amateur star. He worked. He played where he could. He took the long route. That matters because golf is not just a sport. It is a gatekeeping machine. Access matters. Money matters. Invitations matter. Clubs matter. Coaches matter. Travel matters. A player can have talent and still never get close to the stage. Gainey understood that early. He once summed up the economics of the game in a sentence cold enough to explain an entire childhood. No money, you don't play. That line is not dramatic because it sounds bitter. It is dramatic because it sounds practical. There was no romance in it, no grand speech about dreams, just the rule. The door costs money. If you do not have it, you stand outside. So Gainey found other ways. He worked in a factory. He played smaller tours. He entered golf's basement levels, where dreams are cheaper, but failure is closer. He became a professional long before he became secure. He kept moving through the margins. Then television found him. The big break gave him something golf itself had not given him cleanly: visibility. It also gave him another label: reality TV golfer. That label can open doors, but it can also shrink a person. It makes the player look like a character before he is treated like a competitor. Gainey was memorable, and in professional sports, being memorable is both a gift and a trap. The two gloves made people watch. The swing made people talk. The reality show made people remember. But none of that guaranteed respect. Respect had to come from school cards. So Gainey went to Q school. He played mini tours. He bounced through the nationwide and Korn Ferry world. He took the kind of path where one bad week can erase months of work. Then came 2012, the round of 60, the McGladrey Classic, the day the strange swing stopped being a joke. A PGA Tour win changes the surface of a career. It gives a player a line in history. It gives the broadcasters a clean sentence. PGA Tour winner Tommy Gainey. That phrase carries weight. It protects a man from being dismissed too easily, but it does not protect him forever. After the win, the story did not become simple. Gainey did not turn into a dominant tour star. He did not build a long run of victories. The professional golf machine kept moving, and he kept fighting for position inside it. Status came and went. Starts became harder. The big stage became less stable. There were injuries. There were stretches away from the center of attention. There were returns to lower tours and smaller chances. The same man who had once broken through now had to start knocking again. That is when the pattern becomes visible. Not guilt, pattern. Golf did not give him a straight road. So he learned to survive in detours. Factory to mini tour? Mini tour to reality television. Reality television to Q school. Q school to PGA Tour. PGA Tour winner to lost status. Lost status to Korn Ferry. Korn Ferry to past champion exemptions. Past champion exemptions to Monday qualifiers. Monday qualifiers to Champions Tour. Each step looks different, but underneath, the motion is the same. A door closes, he finds another. A label sticks, he plays through it. A career fades. He tries to restart it. For years, that made the Tommy Gainey story inspiring. Then the 2019 arrest forced people to ask a quieter question. What happens when the side door is not heroic? According to reports from the time, the Polk County operation used online advertisements and undercover communication to arrange meetings. Authorities framed the broader operation around prostitution and human trafficking. Gainey was accused of solicitation. He was booked. His name was released. In a legal sense, the next part matters. According to Golf Digest's reporting on court records, Gainey later avoided jail by agreeing to probation. The report said the agreement included 11 months of probation, a class related to human trafficking, possible community service, and financial penalties and fees. In exchange, prosecutors agreed to drop the misdemeanor solicitation charge. That is the legal shape, not a dramatic conclusion, not a clean exoneration, not a conviction narrative, a resolution, a deal, a public record with edges. And then, almost as quickly as the scandal arrived, golf offered the kind of scene that confused everything. In January 2020, only weeks after the arrest, Gainey won on the Corn Ferry Tour in the Bahamas. That is the part that makes the story uncomfortable. Because sports loves redemption. Sports knows how to edit time. It can take a man under pressure, put him on a course, let him perform, and suddenly the audience is invited to feel something else. A scoreboard does not ask moral questions. A leaderboard does not read court records. A birdie does not explain a December arrest. It simply counts. And Gainey counted enough. He won. For some viewers, that victory looked like resilience. For others, it looked like speed. Too fast, too clean, too easy for the sports machine to move forward. Because the allegation had not disappeared emotionally, even if the legal process was moving toward resolution. The story had not gone away. It had just changed rooms. This is how public images survive. Not by answering every question, by outlasting the moment when people are asking them. A scandal breaks. A statement is limited. The tour says little. The next event begins. The player tees it up. The camera moves. Nobody asks again. And then, years later, the old story remains in the archive, waiting for a reason to be opened. That is why the 2019 arrest matters in the larger Tommy Gainey story. Not because it tells us everything about him. It does not. Not because it gives permission to reduce a whole life to one allegation. It should not. It matters because it sits directly against the image that made him famous. The public had been given a clean underdog. A man from the factory. A man with a family. A man with 2 gloves and a strange swing.
A man who did not belong until he forced the game to admit he did.
Then the public was given a different document. A booking. An allegation. A sheriff's joke. A phrase that turned a charity golf trip into a national headline. He was a scratch. That line did more than mock a missed tee time. It punctured a myth. Because the myth depended on simplicity. Tommy Gainey was not supposed to be complicated. He was supposed to be the easy kind of outsider. The kind people can cheer for without risk. The kind who proves that hard work still matters. The kind whose flaws are charming because they stay on the golf course. An ugly swing. 2 gloves. A rough road. Those are safe flaws. A public arrest is not. And once that happened, the old details began to feel different. The side doors. The second chances. The disappearances. The returns. The strange ability to leave one version of the story and reappear in another. Again, none of this proves misconduct beyond what was alleged and resolved in court. It does not turn a career pattern into a moral pattern. It does not make a man guilty of more than the public record supports. But it does create tension, and tension is what a public image cannot easily survive. Because the underdog story asked the viewer to believe that every detour was forced by circumstance. The 2019 story asks whether every detour should be seen that way. That is the uncomfortable part. No one can answer it fully from the outside. There is no public evidence proving some hidden larger scandal around Gainey beyond the reported arrest and legal resolution. There is no known public accuser telling a broader story.
There is no public record, at least in the reporting commonly cited, that turns this into a pattern of similar arrests or repeated allegations.
So their responsible conclusion is narrow. He was arrested. He was accused. He entered a legal agreement. The charge was reportedly dropped as part of that agreement. He returned to golf. He won again. That is what is confirmed. Everything else is atmosphere. But atmosphere can change the way a story is heard. Before 2019, Tommy Gainey's career sounded like survival. After 2019, it sounded like survival with a shadow. The shadow did not erase the factory. It did not erase the mini tours. It did not erase the 60. It did not erase the win. It did not erase the work. But it followed the story, quietly. Then, in later years, Gainey kept doing what he had always done. He kept looking for another door. He moved toward the senior circuit. He played qualifiers. He became, again, the man trying to enter a room without a guaranteed invitation. At 50, when many careers have already hardened into memory, he found another chapter on PGA Tour champions. That chapter matters because it shows the pattern did not end. The comeback instinct was still there. The side door instinct was still there. The willingness to live on the edge of access was still there. And that is where the story becomes more than a scandal. Because if this were only about December 2019, it would be small. A police operation, a golfer's arrest, a legal resolution, a few headlines, then silence. But placed inside the full arc of Tommy Gainey's public life, the arrest becomes something else. Not proof of a hidden life, not proof of a larger crime, but a rupture in the story people preferred. A reminder that the public often loves underdogs because they seem simple. They are easier to forgive when their flaws are useful.
A strange swing is useful.
A humble background is useful. A nickname is useful. Even failure is useful if it leads to a comeback, but some details are not useful. They do not fit the package. They sit there, they wait. They make the next comeback harder to watch cleanly.
That may be the real story of Tommy Gainey after Operation Santa's Naughty List.
Not that the world discovered who he truly was. That would be too much. Not that one allegation explained the whole man. That would be unfair. The real story is that a carefully loved image met a public document it could not absorb. And after that, every return carried two versions of him. The man with two gloves, and the man in the report, the PGA Tour winner. And the name in the sting operation, the factory worker who found a way into golf, and the golfer whose charity trip became part of a sheriff's press conference. The comeback story and the unanswered discomfort underneath it. Maybe that is why the sheriff's line still lands so cold. At first, it sounded like a joke. It was a scratch, a quick phrase, a headline phrase, a line built for television. But after the timeline is laid out, it feels less like a joke and more like a marker. A missed tea time, a missed explanation, a public image missing one piece it could never quite replace. Maybe Tommy Gainey's story was never about one door. Maybe it was about what happens when a man spends his life finding ways through closed ones. Sometimes the side door leads to a tool card. Sometimes it leads to a trophy. And sometimes it leads to a record that follows you back into the light.